Picture this. You're standing just outside a small, remote village in North India. It's pitch black, save for a single flickering lantern hanging under the sprawling, twisted roots of an ancient banyan tree. In this explainer, we're going to dissect one of the most chilling pieces of local folklore out there, the secret of the Halawa. So let's dive right in and break down the mechanics of fear in this story, step by step. Imagine the scent of damp earth and boiling tea leaves. That's Ramu Kaka's old tea stall. By day, it's a bustling hub for farmers and truck drivers, but by night, well, the atmosphere completely changes. And that brings us to the absolute core premise of our story. Ramu Kaka had this one unbreakable absolute rule. No tea for strangers after midnight on Amavasya. Now, Amavasya is the night of the new moon, right? When the sky is completely empty of moonlight, plunging the world into total absolute darkness. And what's really interesting here is how the locals reacted to it. They completely dismissed it. To them, it was just the rambling superstition of an old man. But Ramu Kaka, he knew something they didn't. When people asked him why, he'd just whisper that on that specific night, telling the difference between a human and a monster becomes dangerously impossible. So it's absolutely crucial to understand what exactly they were dealing with. The word Chalawa translates roughly to an illusion or a deceiver. We're not just talking about your standard ghost here. It is a predatory entity that steals forms. It meticulously copies everything about a person. Think of it like a flawless supernatural mimic. By defining this right at the start of the folktale, the narrative sets these incredibly high mythological stakes. You aren't just fighting a monster you can physically see. You're literally fighting the very concept of trust itself. The pacing of this fateful rainy night is just a masterclass in building tension. At 10 p.m., a massive storm rolls in, totally isolating the tea stall. Fast forward to 11:50 p.m., and we have our cast of characters huddled together for warmth. Mohan, Suresh, Gopal, Raghav, and the elderly, wise Haridas Baba. They're just regular guys, having a good time, laughing, sharing stories, completely unaware of the time. But then, 11:59 p.m. hits, just 1 minute before the witching hour. The wind dies down, the crickets literally stop chirping, and this heavy, eerie silence falls over the entire stall. And then, shattering that silence, comes this chilling request. A stranger suddenly emerges from the heavy, wet mist. He is completely drenched, water just pooling at his feet. And because of the fog and this heavy rain hood he's wearing, his face is entirely obscured in shadow. He doesn't yell, he doesn't threaten anyone. He just asks, in this low, almost impossibly calm voice, "Can I get a cup of tea?" Look at how the entire narrative hinges on this one interaction. Ramu Kaka, remembering the rule of the new moon, begins to tremble violently. His hands are shaking so much he can barely even hold a cup. He flat out refuses. And the stranger? He doesn't get angry at all. He just smiles, this slow, terrifying smile that glints in the lantern light. "Okay," he whispers, "I'll take it myself." And instantly, before anyone can even blink, he vanishes completely into the dark, wet night. The men let out this huge collective sigh of relief, thinking they just dealt with some weird traveler. But the horror? It was literally just beginning. Now here is the paralyzing realization. Mohan, who is still catching his breath, turns to his left and sees his friend Suresh sitting right next to him. But at that exact same second, Mohan looks toward the entrance and sees Suresh walking into the shop from outside. Two Sureshes. They have the exact same voice, the exact same face, down to the wrinkles, even the exact same mud stains on their clothes. There is absolutely no physical way to tell who is human and who is the Chalawa. The panic rapidly scales like a virus. It's basically an infection of duplication. First, right before their eyes, Gopal splits into two identical versions. Next, Raghav duplicates. Within seconds, this tiny tea stall is absolutely packed with bodies. Every single man in the shop has a perfect doppelganger. Everyone is screaming, pointing at each other, shouting, "I'm the real one, he is the fake." The noise is deafening. The claustrophobia is intense. Imagine being trapped in a room where half the people want to kill you, and they're wearing the faces of your best friends. And then, the absolute worst case scenario. The shop's lantern flickers, and then it goes out entirely on its own. The tea stall is plunged into absolute pitch black darkness. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You can't see the exit. You can only hear the heavy breathing of the things trapped in that room with you. From the dark corners of the room, disembodied voices start to echo. And they sound exactly like Gopal, exactly like Mohan. whispering rapidly right next to their ears. Trust me. The voices bounce off the walls, multiplying. He is fake. Don't listen to him. Listen to me. The paranoia here is suffocating. If you reach out in the dark, whose hand are you grabbing? The man you've known for 20 years or a monster waiting to tear you apart? I am your friend. The psychological torture here is just brilliant. Fear completely paralyzes everyone in the room. No one dares to take a single step. No one even dares to strike a match. They're just frozen, totally isolated in the pitch black, surrounded by these identical voices pleading for trust. But then, cutting through all that panic, comes a voice of authority. Haridas Baba, the oldest and wisest man in the village. He shouts into the dark, projecting this calm, firm realization that shifts the entire dynamic of the story. He says, the Chalawa can steal a face, it can steal a voice, but it cannot steal memories. This is the major turning point of our explainer. Haridas Baba instantly establishes this brilliant, desperate survival mechanic right on the spot. First, you must ask a question that only your true, lifelong friend would know the answer to. Then, you listen carefully to the response. By doing this, you expose the fake. The monster might have all the physical data downloaded, sure, but it doesn't have the emotional history. Mohan immediately puts this into practice. He turns to where he knows the two Sureshes are standing and shouts a highly specific, deeply personal question into the dark. Suresh, which tree did we steal mangoes from in our childhood? See, this isn't generic trivia. This is a shared, lived experience. Instantly, one voice rings out. From the pond tree! That's the true friend. But the other Suresh, the fake? Absolute silence. The disguise begins to slip because the monster's algorithm has completely failed. As a match is finally struck, lighting up the room, they see the fake Suresh. He's unable to speak, and his human eyes are slowly turning entirely horribly black. He lets out this low, guttural laugh. The jig is up. As the men rapidly interrogate their doppelgangers, the fakes realize they've been exposed, and they begin to melt. All the duplicates merge and twist together into the Chalawa's true, terrifying form. It towers at around 8 feet tall, literally scraping the roof of the tea stall. Its body is emaciated, practically just bones stretched under tight skin. It has glowing, blood-red eyes that pierce the darkness, and a long, slick black tongue dripping from its jaw. The creature, furious at being outsmarted, lets out a deafening roar. And this isn't just a physical threat, it's a supernatural one. The sheer volume of the scream shakes the wooden beams of the tea stall. Outside, the rain turns into a violent, howling storm, as if the monster is trying to summon the elements to swallow the village whole and plunge them permanently into darkness. But Haridas Baba doesn't back down for a second. He reaches into his robes and pulls out a small flask of Gangajal, holy water from the Ganges. He frantically splashes it in a protective circle, sprinkling it everywhere across the mud floor and onto the creature. Then he violently, aggressively chants ancient protective mantras. The holy water acts like acid. The creature begins to shriek in agonizing, unearthly pain, writhing against the spiritual barrier. They are right on the edge. Haridas holds the monster at bay just long enough. At 5:30 a.m., the storm breaks, and the very first ray of dawn pierces through the eastern horizon. The morning light acts as the ultimate weapon here. At 5:31 a.m., touched by the sun, the monster's physical form begins to disintegrate into thick black smoke. And by 5:32 a.m., it vanishes completely into the thin morning air. The men collapse, exhausted. They actually survived. But as the smoke dissipates, a lingering, disembodied whisper echoes through the rafters of the tea stall and out over the sleeping village. I will come again next Amavasya night. It's a chilling reminder that the entity isn't dead. It's just out there, waiting for the next cycle of absolute darkness. The aftermath of this horrifying night changed the village forever. Ramu Kaka didn't just keep his rule, he cemented it. He hung a massive, freshly painted wooden board right at the entrance of the stall, reading, "On Amavasya night, no tea for strangers after midnight." It is a permanent, grave warning born of real trauma. The villagers no longer mock the superstition, they live by it. Which brings us to the end of our analysis and leaves us with one deeply unsettling thought to take away from this folktale. I want you to think about this as you go about your night. If it's the night of the new moon, if it is exactly midnight and a stranger behind you calls out your name, using your exact own voice, will you dare to turn around?